Hello, Year 9. This week we are going to be doing some work on division. We did a little bit of work on division before Christmas, so for the first two lessons of this week, we are going to revisit how we divide a number by a single digit, and then how do we divide a decimal by a single digit, and then by the end of the week, we're going to be looking at how we divide by a two-digit number using a written method. However, before we get started, let's do a little activity to wake up our brains. The balls in the game of pool are numbered 1 to 15, and all I would like to know is what is the total if you add up the numbers on all of those balls. So I'll give you 2 minutes to think about this, maybe jot something down, maybe do it in your head. But I would pause the video here because I'm about to go through the answer. So all we need to do is add the numbers 1 to 15, but I'm just going to show you an interesting way of doing it. So I'm just going to write down the numbers 1 to 15. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So why have I done it like that, do you wonder? Well, I'm always on the lookout for a clever shortcut. What do you notice about all these groups that I've put together? Well, each of these add up to 16, with the exception of the 8, which is kind of by itself. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 16s. And I know that 16 times 7, well, 6 times 7 is 42, 1 times 7 is 7, add the 4. So that makes 112. If I add on the extra 8, I get a total of 120. So the answer to that question is the balls add up to 120. Well done if you managed to get that right, regardless of what method you used. So if you've been able to print out a sheet, that's absolutely great, but if you haven't been able to do so, don't panic. There is not much written work today. Will you make sure you write down the title, written method 6? Will you write down the objective? We are dividing integers, and remember, integers are whole numbers, by a single digit. So obviously we're going to be dividing by numbers from 2, possibly all the way up to 9. There's no need to be able to divide by 1 because the number doesn't change. So make sure you've got your title, date, and objective down in your book. So as I said in the introduction, this is work that we've done before. So before progressing on to something new and a little bit more challenging, we're just revisiting some of the earlier skills that we might be using in the later lessons of the week. So this method that we're going to use is called a bus shelter method. Some of you might prefer to call it a bus stop method. And one of the big differences between this written method and all the other written methods of addition, subtraction, multiplication is we actually start in the largest place value column. So I'm just going to remind you how we set these out. Using the squares in your book to space out your work today is super important. So let's look at my first example, which is 752 divided by 4. So the first thing that I do is I write the number that I am dividing under my bus shelter. And what I am dividing by, I write at the side. Now we start with this digit 7 and we divide 7 by 4. So I normally say, how many times does 4 go into that number? So 4 goes into 7 1 time. And anything that's left over, which we call a remainder, is carried on to the next number. And if 4 goes into 7 once, there are 3 left over. And we carry that on to the next digit, and we now read that number as 35. So how many 4s go into 35? So you can count up in 4s on your fingers if you need to. 4s into 35 goes 8 times, because 4 times 8 is 32. So we have used 32 of the 35, which means again there is a remainder of 3. How many times does 4 go into 32? Well, that is 8 again. So the answer to 752 divided by 4 is 188. Let's look at a second example. So I'm now going to do a 4-digit number, but I'm dividing by 5, and 5 is probably one of the times tables that you know the best. So 2,675, one number per square, divided by 5. So how many 5s go into 2? Make sure you do this the right way around. It isn't how many 2s go into 5, we are dividing by 5. How many 5s go into 2? And because this is a bigger number than this doesn't go at all. So it goes 0 times. I haven't used any of those 2, so both of those are remainders. Now it's 5 into 26. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, so it goes 5 times with 1 left over. 5's into 17, 5, 10, 15, that's 3 times with 2 left over. And 5 into 25 goes 5 times. Now I've put this naught there at the front, this 0. You don't have to put that there, as long as you remember when you're reading your final answer that the answer is 535. I wouldn't write the 0. So 535. Now every single question that we do today is gonna finish. There's gonna be no remainders at the end. So if you have any remainders at this final point, you have definitely gone wrong. So look through your question carefully. So we're gonna have a go at 4 further examples, just to make sure we know what we're doing, and then we're gonna try some questions for ourselves. So again, I'm gonna set this out in the same way. I've got 768 divided by 6. How many times does 6 go into 7? It goes once with 1 left over. How many times does 6 go into 16? Well, I can get as far as 12, and that is 2 6s. The difference between 12 and 16 is 4, so I've got 4 left over. How many times does 6 go into 48? Well, that is 8 times. So the answer to this one is 128. Now, obviously, if you know your times tables really, really well, then you're more likely to be able to do these questions a lot quicker today. The next one is 1,752 divided by 3. So again, perhaps 3 is one of your better times tables. How many times does 3 go into 1? Well, it doesn't. So I haven't used that 1, carry it to the next column. How many times does 3 go into 17? Well, 3 times 5 is 15, so it can go 5 times with 2 left over. How many 3s go into 25? That is 8, because 3 times 8 is 24. So if I've used 24, I've got 1 left over. And how many 3s are in 12? That is 4. So the answer to 1752 divided by 3 is 584. So I hope you're getting a good idea of how to set them out today. I'm using 2 different colours. You don't need to use 2 different colours. I just thought 2 different colours makes it a lot easier for you to see my remainders and what I'm carrying on to the next column. So I'll leave that entirely up to you. 2 more to go. We've got 3,663 divided by 9. How many times does 9 go into 3? Well, it's a bigger number, so it doesn't go. Carry all 3. How many times does 9 go into 36? Well, that goes exactly 4 times. So there isn't any remainder to carry this time. How many times does 9 go into 6? Well, again, 9 is a bigger number, so it doesn't go. That is 0 times. So I have to carry all 6 as my remainder. And how many times does 9 go into 63? Well, 9 times 7 is 63. So the answer to this one is yes, I ignore that first 0, but I definitely need this 0. It is 407. Final example, 5,712 divided by 8. So I think you'll appreciate the last 2 questions I've done slightly harder times tables, dividing by 9, and now we're dividing by 8. Do you know your 8 times table really well? How many times does 8 go into 5? Well, it's a bigger number, so it doesn't carry the remainder of 5. 8 into 57. Well, I know that 8 times 7 is 56, so it must be 7 times with 1 left over. Now 8 into 11 is just 1 with 3 left over, and 8 into 32 goes 8, 16, 24, 32 4 times. So the answer to my final example is 714. So you can either pause the video here to access the 12 questions that I'm going to ask you to try, or you can follow the link to my PowerPoint where you can find the slide with these questions to try. Please set them out in your book as shown in the last 6 examples. Do not panic if you cannot get them all done in the time remaining. Do as many as you can, but always remember to leave that last 5 minutes to check your answers. You will see in the answers on my slide, I have set out the answers in the exact same way that I have done the examples today. As always, if you have any problems, you can ask in the Ask the Teacher channel.